After graduating from university, I returned to my hometown of Clare County to work as an English teacher at a private high school. In recent years, this high school has become famous in our state, setting an amazing record of maintaining a college admission rate of over 93 for 5 consecutive years. Junior high school graduates from other cities in the state are desperate to get into our high school. By the time I joined, there were 20 classes in the 10th grade alone, with more than 70 students in each class. Including repeat students, there are a total of more than 500 students in the school. The school implements a closed boarding management system, and students are only allowed to go home once a month. Each grade is divided into fast, medium, and slow classes, and there is a separate Ivy League class. Students are rotated based on their midterm and final exam scores. At first, I thought that the students who could enter this high school must be good students with excellent academic performance in junior high school. But what happened later made me realize that I was still too young. You can't imagine what cool things those seemingly polite and obedient good students would do. As a subject teacher, I teach English to 3 10th grade liberal arts classes. One afternoon, during activity class, I had just finished organizing my lesson plans and was about to go for a walk on the playground. As I walked out of the office, I saw 5 girls playing and walking down from the 6th floor together. The girl in the lead was tall and slender with delicate features. I looked a little familiar, but I didn't know her. It seemed like she was a student in the Ivy League class. Of the 4 students behind her, I knew 2 of them. They were students in the middle class. Did you just see Sophia's expression? It was so funny. The girl from the Ivy League class covered her mouth, her face full of smiles, and triumphantly said something to the girls behind her. When the other girls saw me, they quickly signaled the girl from the Ivy League class to stop talking. She turned her head and saw me. A flash of panic crossed her face, and she quickly lowered her voice and hurried away with the other girls. I was puzzled. This semester, the school is preparing to transform the 6th floor into places like a library, reading room, and music classrooms. So the 6th floor is currently in a semi-abandoned state. Usually, very few students go up there, except for some boys who go to the bathroom on the 6th floor to smoke secretly. And Sophia, the girl mentioned by the girl just now, is also my student, also from the middle class. Her academic performance is neither good nor bad, considered average. She usually likes to doodle on her test papers. In my impression, Sophia is introverted and doesn't talk much. She is the kind of student who is honest and obedient without much presence. Usually, these students are the most worry-free for teachers. No surprises, but no trouble either. Could it be that she was up there too? I couldn't help but take a step and walked up to the 6th floor. The hallway was quiet, with only a faint sound coming from the women's bathroom. I walked into the women's bathroom quietly and saw Sophia standing inside with her clothes disheveled. After seeing me, she was stunned for a moment, then blushed and said, "Hello, teacher," to me. I was also very surprised. Her cheeks were a little red and swollen, and her hair was messy. There was a half-empty bottle of mineral water and a crumpled ball of paper on the ground next to her. I picked up the ball of paper and unfolded it. It was a math test paper, and there were some doodles in the blank space in the upper right corner. However, only half of the test paper remained. The other half was torn off. I looked around, but couldn't find the other half of the test paper in the bathroom. Thinking of the bottle of mineral water on the ground, a chilling guess suddenly popped into my mind. Could it be that the girls who went downstairs just now forced Sophia to eat the other half of the test paper? As a new teacher, this was the first time I had encountered campus bullying. For a moment, I didn't know how to speak, so I could only ask dryly, "Sophia, what are you doing here?" "Dear teacher, I came to use the bathroom." But the doors of the cubicles in the bathroom on the 6th floor were all sealed and unusable. I didn't expose Sophia's clumsy excuse, but felt a pang of heartache. After thinking for a few seconds, I still made up my mind and asked her directly, "Sophia, be honest with me. Is anyone bullying you at school?" Unexpectedly, Sophia trembled all over, as if she was very scared, and shook her head repeatedly, saying, "No, no one is bullying me." I was speechless and couldn't ask any more questions. I could only tell her, "If you encounter any problems, you must tell the teacher in time. Do you understand?" "I understand, thank you, teacher." Sophia looked at me gratefully, turned around, and left the bathroom. The entire afternoon after that, I was restless in the office. All I could see was Sophia's face and the half-torn test paper on the bathroom floor. Coincidentally, that evening, the head teacher of the Ivy League class had something to do and asked me to help watch their evening self-study. As soon as I pushed the door and walked into the classroom, I saw the girl I had bumped into in the hallway in the afternoon, writing the homework assigned by the teacher on the blackboard. Seeing me come in, she very politely greeted me, "Hello, teacher," and then helped me tidy up the podium. She looked like a standard good student. During the evening self-study, I found an excuse and opened her exercise book. I saw her name. I finally understood why I found her familiar before. This girl's name is Olivia. She is the monitor and the English class representative of the Ivy League class. Not only does she have excellent academic performance, but she also comes from a wealthy family. I heard that her father donated the library to the school. During the opening ceremony, she was the one who gave a speech on behalf of the 10th grade students. To be honest, I find it hard to associate Olivia with school bullying. After the evening self-study, I deliberately asked Olivia to help me take my things back to the office. I pretended to ask casually, "Hey, do you know Sophia, the girl from class 4? The expression on her face stiffened obviously, but returned to normal in an instant, and she gave me a sweet smile. "Yes, she is a good friend of my roommate. We all know each other." I continued to ask, "How is your relationship with her? There is no conflict, right?" "Of course not. We have a good relationship." Olivia looked at me innocently, her bright eyes flashing with doubt. "What's wrong, teacher? Did someone say that we have a bad relationship?" I was taken aback by her question and could only say a little awkwardly, "No, I was just asking casually. After all, I have no evidence of her bullying Sophia, and I am not the head teacher. Considering her family's relationship with the school, it would be troublesome to question her rashly." She nodded thoughtfully, put down her things, and left. I didn't know at the time that this was the last time I would see Olivia alive. The next morning, just as the sky was getting light, I heard a piercing siren outside the staff dormitory building. I hurriedly put on a coat and went out, and found that the police car was parked downstairs in building of the female dormitory building, followed by an ambulance. The entrance of the dormitory building was in chaos. The head of the grade was trying to maintain order. Several girls kept crying, seeming to be in shock. I hurriedly stepped forward to help, constantly comforting the girls. More and more students gathered to watch the excitement, and soon a few more teachers rushed over, constantly driving away the students gathered at the entrance of the dormitory. Through the chatter of those students, I heard a news that shocked me beyond words. Olivia was dead, and she died in a bizarre way. It is said that her limbs were completely twisted, her mouth was stuffed with paper balls, and she suffocated to death. Before morning self-study, most of the students were dispersed back to the teaching building. I was about to go to the Ivy League class to watch the morning self-study when I received a call from the head of the grade, asking me to go to the administration building immediately and temporarily found another teacher to take my place. I came out of the teaching building and passed by building a dormitory building. I saw many police officers and people in white coats coming in and out. Several school leaders also arrived and were talking to the police with serious expressions. I retracted my gaze and walked quickly to the administration building. The office the head of the grade asked me to go to was room 101, located at the end of the west corridor on the first floor. As I walked through the hallway, I noticed that most of the other offices were occupied. 2 police officers were questioning girls, and a teacher was accompanying them. I counted them specifically. There were 5 girls being questioned. If I guessed correctly, they should all be Olivia's roommates. After knocking on the door, I was about to push the door open when I suddenly heard a voice coming from the hall. I turned my head subconsciously and saw another girl being led by 2 policemen to an office in the east corridor. Although it was a bit far away, I still recognized the girls back at a glance. My hand holding the doorknob froze. That girl was Sophia. In my confusion, I pushed the door open and saw the head of the grade and 2 police officers sitting in the office. Seeing me come in, the head of the grade quickly got up and introduced her. This is Teacher Laura. She was the one who watched the Ivy League classes evening self-study yesterday. Then the head of the grade turned to me and continued, these 2 are comrades from the city's criminal police team, Officer Smith and Officer Williams. They will ask you a few questions later. Don't be nervous, just answer truthfully. The head of the grade couldn't be present when the police questioned me. Before leaving, he gave me a meaningful look and patted my shoulder comfortingly. Of course, I could understand the hint from the head of the grade. He was telling me to be careful when answering questions and try to avoid any negative impact on the school. Officer Smith, with a serious face, gestured for me to sit down, took out a photo and pushed it towards me. Teacher Laura, do you know the student in the photo? I glanced at it and nodded, saying, yes, her name is Olivia. She is the monitor and English class representative of the Ivy League class. But I am not a teacher in the Ivy League class, so I don't have much contact with her. Officer Smith continued to ask, then what is your impression of her? Did she behave abnormally during the evening self-study last night? Well, I did not answer Officer Smith's question directly, but tentatively asked, can I ask what happened? Officer Smith hesitated for a moment, then said briefly, last night Olivia was murdered. My head buzzed, and my whole body went stiff. After all, what I had heard before were all rumors. Hearing this news confirmed by the police still shocked me greatly. We have preliminarily judged that this is a criminal case, so please cooperate with our work." Only then did I come back to my senses. I recalled this scene last night in my mind and said, I have a good impression of Olivia. She is very polite. During the evening self-study last night, I didn't notice anything unusual about her. Officer Smith nodded and asked again, "Have you heard of anyone having conflicts with Olivia recently?" A name immediately came to my mind, Sophia. But to my surprise, I shook my head and pursed my lips, not mentioning Sophia's name. But unexpectedly the next second, I heard Officer Smith ask me then, "Do you know Sophia, a student from class 4, 10th grade?" I was struck by liking and looked up at him in a daze. After the incident, we'd found this video on Olivia's phone. Officer Smith took out an evidence bag containing a mobile phone, tapped the screen a few times through the bag, and played a video. He pointed the phone at me and pressed the play button. The background of the video was a bathroom, and the shooting time was the night before, probably during evening self-study. In the video, Sophia lowered her head and shrank in the corner, and Olivia in front of her seemed like a different person. She was not at all like the well-behaved and polite girl she usually was. Instead, she was pulling Sophia's hair and slapping her face repeatedly. "How dare you give Ethan a drink? You make me sick, just looking at you. You jinx." As Olivia hit Sophia, she kept cursing. Sophia didn't dare to resist at all. She just kept choking and saying, "I'm sorry." Immediately afterwards, Olivia took a test paper from outside the camera, and after confirming that it was Sophia's English homework, she directly tore the paper in half, crumpled it into a bowl, and stuffed it into Sophia's hand, then handed her a bottle of water. "You eat this, and I will let you go today." Sophia looked at the bowl of paper in her hand, timidly. Under Olivia's constant coercion, she had to hold back her tears and put the bowl of paper into her mouth. I quickly looked away, unable to bear to watch any longer, and only heard a piercing laugh from the video. Officer Smith turned off the video in a timely manner, remained silent for a while, and then asked teacher, "Lola, did you know about this?" My throat seemed to be blocked by something, and I couldn't say a word. I could only shake my head repeatedly. "Okay, we have no further questions for the time being. If you remember anything related to Olivia, please contact us in time." Officer Smith was about to get up and leave when I finally heard my own voice squeeze out, Are you suspecting Sophia?" "Teacher Laura, don't think too much about it. We are still in the routine investigation stage, and anyone may be a suspect." After Officer Smith left, I felt as if my body was as heavy as lead, and my temples were throbbing. Although the school explicitly prohibited the discussion of Olivia's case, the news that a girl had been murdered spread throughout the school quickly. I heard teachers in the office chatting that in the early hours of the morning, a girl woke up relatively early and was about to go to the bathroom to wash up. As soon as she entered, she saw Olivia lying on the ground, her hands and feet broken at strange angles, her mouth stuffed with paper balls. The girl happened to be Olivia's roommate, and she was so frightened that she immediately sought help from the dormitory manager. After learning about the situation, the dormitory manager immediately called the police, and as instructed by the police, immediately sealed off the bathroom. That morning, after the police finished questioning, the girl was picked up by her parents. If I remember correctly, for the safety of the students, surveillance cameras were installed in the corridors of each dormitory building. As long as the police retrieve the surveillance footage, they should be able to quickly identify the suspect. But another teacher told me that the strange thing about this case is that Olivia was the last person to enter the bathroom that night. It is said that Olivia entered the bathroom at 12 o'clock in the evening. From then until 5 o'clock the next morning when her body was found, no one entered or left the bathroom. Later, the teacher mysteriously told me that the person who had been to the bathroom before Olivia was none other than Sophia. Almost at the same time, the news about Olivia bullying Sophia spread quickly throughout the school. There is even a saying that it was Sophia who killed Olivia. But this is clearly baseless rumor. As far as I know, the police did conduct some investigations around Sophia, but soon determined that she had no conditions for committing the crime and cleared her suspicion. Olivia's parents also came to the school several times and put a lot of pressure on the school, but it was useless. No evidence is no evidence, and the police can't just arrest people randomly. Moreover, their daughter was the perpetrator of school bullying. If this matter became a big deal, it would not look good on their faces, and it might even have a negative impact on the company's operations. However, even so, Sophia's life at school was still not easy. In short, she was isolated. Although on the surface, most of the students did not do anything excessive, but in private, they all believed that Sophia was the murderer and avoided her deliberately. The school originally planned to let Sophia take a break for a while, but her family is from another place. Her parents both work in the south, and there is no one to take care of her, so they had to give up temporarily. Half a month passed, and the police's investigation reached a stalemate with no substantial progress. This made Sophia's situation even more difficult. Sometimes when I went to class 4 for class, I could clearly feel the depressing atmosphere in the class. Everyone deliberately or unintentionally alienated Sophia and were unwilling to say a word to her. During that time, looking at Sophia, who was alone on campus, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness in my heart. But what I didn't expect was that within a few days, Sophia's situation. It was noon one day when I bumped into Sophia while eating in the cafeteria. The students in our high school are all very time conscious when they eat. The fast ones can finish eating in 5 minutes, then hurry back to the dormitory to read more books. But that day, I noticed something unusual about Sophia. It wasn't until 4 or 5 boys came with their trays and sat at the table next to her that Sophia began to lower her head and speed up. But when Sophia finished her meal and left with the tray, she didn't take the drink away. I was wondering when I saw one of the boys who had sat at the table next to Sophia. A tall and handsome boy stood up. Amidst a burst of laughter, he walked over and picked up the bottle of drink, and even took a small piece of paper from the bottle cap. It was then that I remembered that the boy's name was Ethan, a sports student in class 10, 10th grade. He had the face of a star and a good figure. It was said that many girls had secretly given him love letters, but he refused them all. I just didn't expect him to actually have anything to do with Sophia. But on second thought, it's understandable. To be fair, although Sophia has a somewhat dull personality, she is not bad, looking with delicate features and good foundation. With a little dressing up, she can attract a lot of boys. But Ethan's next move made me frown. He handed the note to other boys. After reading it in a circle, they all burst into laughter. Then someone wanted to hand the drink to Ethan, but he put on an exaggerated expression of disgust and threw the drink into the trash can. As the boys walked past me with their arms around each other, I heard Ethan say something. I wouldn't dare drink a drink bought by a murderer. At that moment, the air around me seemed to freeze. In the next few days, I noticed that the secret interactions between Sophia and Ethan became more frequent. For example, during activity class, Sophia would take her notebook to the basketball court for a walk, and then secretly put the notebook behind a basketball stand while Ethan was playing basketball on that half court. And after the evening self-study, Sophia would deliberately stay at the entrance of the stairs for a while. When the people from class 10 came down, she would find Ethan in the crowd and follow him with her head down. I could clearly feel that Sophia was very dependent on Ethan now. In Sophia's world, at this moment, Ethan was the only ray of light that could bring her warmth. But I'm worried that this light will eventually burn her. So, one evening during self-study, I deliberately called Sophia to the office, wanting to remind her a little. After entering the office, Sophia kept her head down the entire time, looking very timid. I cleared my throat twice, then hardened my heart and said, Sophia, are you getting a little too close to Ethan from class 10th grade recently? She suddenly raised her head. Her eyes flashed with panic and quickly explained, Teacher, I didn't. We are just ordinary classmates. Really? Facing her pale and weak explanation, I could only smile a little and comfort her. I don't mean to blame you, but you must be clear in your heart that you are still a high school student, and you should focus on your studies. Do you understand? Sophia's face was flushed, her lips pressed into a line. After a brief silence, I suddenly heard Sophia ask me, Teacher, do you think I killed Olivia? I froze for a moment, and before I could answer, she added on her own, Ethan said he believed me. I looked at Sophia, wanting to say something. My lips moved for a long time, but I didn't say anything. Thank you, Teacher. I will pay more attention in the future. Finally, Sophia dropped the sentence and turned to leave the office. A few days later, what I was most worried about still happened. One day, during the long break between classes, while the head teachers of each class were having a meeting, a commotion broke out on the playground when class 10th grade lined up. I was preparing lesson plans in the office on the second floor at the time, and from the window of the English group, I could just see class 10th grade, which was the closest. Before they started running, Ethan triumphantly held up an envelope in his hand and read the contents of the letter aloud in a tone that pretended to be serious, but was actually mocking. What's more, he began to pretend to retch every few sentences he read, which caused bursts of laughter around him. I hope we will always be best friends. See dig, follow the victims. So now, when you read the last sentence, Ethan deliberately emphasized the word friends. Another boy who was in charge of booing immediately answered, Ethan, you are so charming. Even murderers want to be friends with you. Another round of snickers erupted around them. Look, she even drew you a picture. Don't say it, it's pretty good. The boy pulled out another piece of letter paper, on which was a simple sketch of a boy playing basketball. Although the lines of the painting were a bit immature, the style was vivid, and it could be seen that it was drawn with care. Who would want a painting drawn by a murderer? It's scary. Ethan tore the lettered paper and the painting to shreds in a few strokes, directly pushing the atmosphere at the scene to a climax. The head teacher of class 10th grade was a male teacher in his 30s. When he rushed back, he was furious. He pulled several boys, including Ethan, out of the queue and gave them a severe scolding. But Ethan looked indifferent, his eyes fixed on the direction of class 4 10th grade. His goal of humiliating Sophia had been achieved. I saw that Sophia was called aside by their head teacher, as if asking her what was going on. Sophia bowed her head, wishing she could bury her head and her chest hurt. After only a few words, Sophia turned and left the playground, walking quickly towards the teaching building. Soon, the news that Sophia tried to pursue Ethan, but was rejected, spread like wildfire. In addition to murderer, she was labeled shameless. Every time Sophia walked by on campus, there would be girls pointing at her. If this storm was just a fuse that pushed Sophia to the forefront, then what happened next was the powder keg that completely detonated it. 3 days later, Ethan's body was found on the basketball court in the early morning. It is said that when Ethan was found, his head was stuck in the basket, his neck seemed to be broken, and his body was hanging precariously on the edge of the basket, scaring a boy who was about to go to the basketball court for morning reading half to death. This time, almost everyone pointed the finger at Sophia, even some teachers in the school. However, after some preliminary investigation, the police found that the circumstances surrounding Ethan's death were as strange as Olivia's before. Even surveillance video from the boys' dormitory building was circulated. This surveillance video is simply bizarre to the extreme. Ethan seemed to be manipulated by an unknown force, making a series of incredible actions. Surveillance showed that at 1:30 in the morning, Ethan walked out of the dormitory building stiffly, walked across the campus, and went straight to the basketball court. In the dim light, Ethan climbed onto the edge of the backboard and let himself fall backwards. Then his body twitched a few times, and then he stopped moving. After that, no one approached the basketball court until the next morning. Initially, the police did focus their investigation on Sophia, but after much investigation, they couldn't find any evidence that she committed the crime. Like Olivia's case, Ethan's case also reached a dead end. But there is a rumor circulating among the students that Sophia has a bad omen on her body. Anyone who has been drawn by her will be cursed and die tragically. They said Ethan was the best example. Sophia had drawn Ethan a picture of playing basketball before, but Ethan tore it up, and then Ethan died on the basketball court. This is completely unfounded speculation, but many people actually believe it. As a result, the disgust towards Sophia has almost reached the point of being undisguised. Every time Sophia left the classroom and came back, there would be all kinds of insect corpses on her desk, or the chair would be covered with glue, and sometimes even her school bag would be thrown outside the classroom. I have encountered it several times during my class. As for the other students in the class, it was as if they acquiesced to the justice of this approach, and no one stood up to help Sophia. What's more, even some teachers turned a blind eye to Sophia's experience. Moreover, that hostility was even more naked, almost blatant, trying to force Sophia to leave. Especially Mrs. Robinson, the head teacher of class 4 10th grade, was a middle-aged woman in her 40s. She was under a lot of pressure after the incident. She talked to Sophia several times, hoping that she could transfer to another high school, but Sophia refused to budge and did not agree. In fact, this is understandable. After all, the high school Sophia is currently in is one of the best. She managed to get in from a county junior high school, so she definitely doesn't want to leave easily. After several attempts to persuade her to no avail, Mrs. Robinson, in a fit of anger, began to torture Sophia in various ways. "Look at the homework you wrote. What in this?" In the office, Mrs. Robinson was furious and threw the exercise book directly at Sophia's face. "Just look at you. How dare you still come to school? If I were you, I would have gone home to farm." Sophia hunched over, squatted down to pick up the exercise book, clenched it tightly in her hand, and didn't dare to say a word. Mrs. Robinson seemed to be tired of scolding, got up to get a glass of water, returned to her desk, and began to grade the homework, leaving Sophia aside, ignoring her. It had been more than 10 minutes since class started, and Sophia was still standing there like a wooden stake. Unable to bear it any longer, she asked, cautiously, "Teacher, I know I was wrong. Can I go back to class first?" Mrs. Robinson glared at Sophia angrily. "Go back to class? You still want to go back to class? Just stand in the office for me. Stand for a whole day." Sophia bit her lip tightly, so longed that she almost cried. "I must have done something terrible in my past life to meet a student like you." Mrs. Robinson spat, getting angrier as she scolded. "I tell you, if I don't feel good, don't even think about feeling good." After scolding Mrs. Robinson added another sentence. "Go, stand outside the door. Don't be an eyesore here." Sophia had no choice but to reluctantly move her footsteps and stood at the door of the office. Similar scenes have happened more than once. Sometimes when I was teaching in another class, I could hear Mrs. say, Robinson reprimanding Sophia in the corridor. After a few days, her mental state became worse and worse. She often lost her mind in class, and her whole body seemed to translate. The day the midterm exam results came out, Sophia's results were not ideal. She was 5 points away from the lowest score line in the middle class, and was about to be streamed to the slow class. But Sophia stubbornly took the test paper and found Mrs. Robinson saying that she had written down all the key points of several history essay questions, but she didn't get any points. Mrs. Robinson didn't even look at it, and threw the test paper aside, saying impatiently, "What's the use of just writing down the key points? You didn't combine the materials, so you definitely won't get any points." Sophia still refused to give up, trying to calm the trembling in her voice. But other students only wrote the key points and got points before Sophia could finish the essay. Robinson interrupted. "The scores have been recorded. It's useless for you to talk nonsense with me here. Just try harder in the final exam next time." Sophia stopped talking, lowered her head, half of her face submerged in shadow, and turned to leave the office with the test paper. The activity class after the midterm exam was specially used for class changes. Most teachers would go to their respective classes to maintain order, followed by class meetings. After a while of noise, the monitor of class 4 10th grade did not see Mrs. Robinson for a long time, so he was about to go to the office to find her. Unexpectedly, he found Mrs. Robinson dead in the office. She was lying on the desk in the office. Half of her face exposed, her mouth wide open, her eyes missing. The police rushed to the school immediately and sealed off the entire office. But when they retrieved the surveillance footage, they were once again shocked by what they saw. The surveillance video showed that after Mrs. Dadanai Robinson walked into the office, she suddenly felt unwell, covered her eyes, and let out a painful scream. Half of her face seemed to be melting, blood constantly flowing down. Within a few minutes, Mrs. Robinson fell into the chair in front of the desk and stopped moving. It is said that everyone who saw the surveillance video at that time fell into a deathly silence. This is almost a case that cannot be understood with normal thinking. The police questioned many students and teachers, including Sophia, but found nothing. Surveillance video from the corridor and office also showed that no one approached Mrs. Robinson at the time of the incident. This brought the police investigation to a standstill once again. Candice Wu, the victims. These 3 recent cases have left the entire school in panic. More and more people believe that provoking Sophia will bring a curse. There are even many students who choose to ask for leave to go home, for fear that they will be next. However, Sophia's situation has improved a lot because of this. Most people no longer dare to bully Sophia openly. Although I don't know how she did it, I guess the deaths of those 3 people have something to do with Sophia. Because recently, during activity class, I often see Sophia alone at her desk, scribbling as if drawing something. The day Mrs. Robinson had an accident at noon, I peeked at the painting hidden in Sophia's desk, and the content of that painting was exactly the same as what Mrs. Robinson looked like when she died. I was thinking about this, and as soon as I walked to the door of the teaching building, I ran into Officer Smith and Officer Williams. As I looked at them in astonishment, Officer Smith, with a grim expression, took out a pair of cold handcuffs and handcuffed my wrists. "Teacher Laura, we suspect you of being the murderer in the 3 murders. Please cooperate with our investigation." In the cold interrogation room, Officer Smith and Officer Williams sat opposite me, with various materials on the table, but I couldn't understand any of them. Officer Smith pointed to 3 pieces of paper in evidence bags and asked me, "Do these 3 paintings look familiar to you?" I looked up and saw that the 3 paintings were all simple drawings done with black charcoal pencils. The overall style of the paintings is simple, and the lines are clear. The first painting is of a girl lying on a tiled floor, her limbs twisted, her mouth stuffed with paper balls. The second painting is of a boy hanging from a basketball hoop with a basketball court in the background. The third painting is of a woman lying on her desk, missing half of her face, her eyes 2 black holes. They correspond to the way Olivia, Ethan, and Mrs. Robinson looked when they died. I was hesitating whether to say Sophia's name when I suddenly heard Officer Smith say, "We checked the surveillance. You put these 3 paintings in Sophia's desk when she was not paying attention." What? How is this possible? I stared at Officer Smith in disbelief as he handed me his phone. The surveillance video on it showed that I had entered class 4, 10th grade 3 times during lunch break and put the drawing paper in my hand on Sophia's desk. But I don't remember doing these things at all. What about these paintings? Do you have any impression of them? Officer Smith took out a few more paintings and placed them in front of me, about 5 or 6. There were couples trapped in car accidents, boys hanging from trees, and girls soaked in water. The content and scenes of the paintings were different. Some could even only be considered doodles, but it was obvious that the styles of the paintings were similar. The drawing paper has been oxidized and yellowed, and it seems that some time has passed. Officer Smith stared at me with sharp eyes and said slowly, "You drew all of these?" "From elementary school to junior high school, university, you have drawn a total of 5 such paintings. And the people in these 5 paintings are all dead." Listening to Officer Smith's words, my mind was buzzing. According to Officer Smith, when I was a graduate student at a university in the South, one of my roommates and my mentor died tragically, one after another. While investigating, the police accidentally found 2 of my paintings in the dormitory, and the content was exactly how my roommate and mentor looked when they died tragically. So the police followed the clues and found more paintings in my house, as well as several bizarre deaths that revolved around me from childhood to adulthood, all of which coincided with the contents of the paintings. However, the police have never been able to figure out how I did it. It wasn't long before I was diagnosed with a functional mental disorder and forcibly sent to a mental hospital for treatment. After more than 2 years of treatment, my symptoms have improved, but I have also lost some memories. After I was discharged from the hospital, I returned to this high school in Clare County, my hometown, and became a high school teacher. Accompanied by a needle, like pain in my brain, those dead memories began to revive. I remember. Officer Smith was right. Those people were indeed killed by me with paintings. The first time I became aware of my abilities was in the 3rd grade of elementary school. I have been interested in drawing since I was a child, but my parents thought that drawing would delay my studies. Not only did they throw away all my drawing tools, but they also warned me that if I dared to draw again, they would break my hands. In a fit of anger, I drew a scene of my parents being killed in a car accident. To be honest, I was just venting my anger at the time, but I didn't expect the scene in the painting to actually come true. Later, after several attempts, I gradually figured out how to activate my abilities. Once I make skin contact with the other person, I can mark them. Within 24 hours, as long as the other party enters the scene in my painting, they will die in the way I painted, due to some special reason. Over the past few years, I have used this ability to get rid of many people who have hurt me, classmates who laughed at me for being an orphan, roommates who didn't sleep at night, and tutors who tried to molest me. So after witnessing what happened to Sophia in a subconscious stimulation, I drew those 3 paintings. However, due to my past trauma, my brain automatically blocked out these behaviors of mine. But there is one more thing that only I know. That is, my ability actually disappeared as early as when I was receiving treatment. In other words, the 3 paintings I stuffed to Sophia had no effect. Because I remember very clearly that after coming to this high school, I have drawn more than these 3 paintings. I also drew the head of the grade dying in the cafeteria, and a student who made trouble in my class dying in the toilet. But they are all still alive and well. Officer Smith slammed the table and shouted, "Laura, be honest. How did you do it?" I looked at him calmly and just said softly, "I request a psychiatric evaluation." When I was sent to the mental hospital for treatment again, Officer Smith repeatedly told my attending doctor, Lee, not to let me draw or get any paper and pens, which made me want to laugh. The police had no conclusive evidence of my crime and could not apply for my arrest. Coupled with the recurrence of my illness, there was nothing more they could do to me. I think this is good too. Staying in a mental hospital gave me a long-lost sense of peace. I was in a single ward and was the focus of police attention, so I didn't have to worry about anyone doing anything too outrageous to me. I just had to eat and take medicine on time every day and go for a walk accompanied by a nurse. Along with my thoughts, everything around me seemed to slow down. One night, half a month later, I was awakened from my sleep by the nurse, with my attending doctor Gilbert standing beside me. The nurse, wearing a mask, said that there was an emergency, and I needed to be taken away. For some reason, I always felt that Dr. Lee looked a little strange. His eyes were dull, his movements were a little stiff, and there was some cloud, like purple, red marks on his neck. But I didn't pay much attention. Out of the mental hospital, the nurse motioned for me to get into a black car parked at the door. After getting in the car, the nurse took off her mask, revealing a delicate and beautiful face. She said her name was Alice. And she was from an organization called Brave New World, which aims to create a new world without disputes and crimes. Every member of the organization has unique special abilities. I stared at her blankly, not understanding what she was talking about for a while. Alice smiled, rolled down the car window, and Dr. Lee, who was standing outside the car, took the initiative to roll up his sleeves, revealing a section of his pale arm. I saw a cut on Dr. Lee's wrist, and the blood had dried up. It was only then that I realized that Dr. Lee, who was standing in front of me at this moment, was already dead. The car started slowly, and through the rearview mirror, I saw that Dr. Lee was still standing there, watching us leave. I told Alice that I couldn't use my special abilities anymore. She didn't care at all. She just smiled and told me that she would find a way to help me recover my abilities. Oh, by the way, one more thing I forgot to tell you, Alice added, as if she had suddenly remembered. That student of yours, Sophia, is also very interesting. She took out a folder from the back seat and handed it to me. Inside was a wrinkled drawing and a half-cut pencil with dark spots on it. The painting was drawn with a pencil, and the content was a collapsed building. I recognized it at a glance as the freshman teaching building of our high school. Then Alice handed me a mobile phone with a piece of news displayed on it. I skimmed through it and learned that just 3 days ago, the freshman teaching building of that high school suddenly collapsed for unknown reasons, killing more than 100 students and teachers. On the list of victims, I saw Sophia's name. I investigated, and Sophia was 6 years old. Her father stabbed her mother to death with the pencil you are holding now. Her current parents are her adoptive parents. Alice paused and continued. I think Sophia must have used that pencil to imitate the 3 paintings you gave her to kill those 3 people. It's just that I didn't find those 3 paintings. They should have been destroyed by her. This last one was found next to her body. After listening to Alice's words, I was a little at a loss. I thought I should be very surprised, but I didn't know why I should be surprised. A sense of clarity and confusion enveloped me, leaving me at a loss for what to do. To some extent, I always felt that Sophia was the me in the past. Alice sighed softly and said with emotion, "What a pity for this child." I clenched the pencil in my hand and turned to look out the car window. The night was falling. The neon lights of the city were twinkling. The lights seemed to be overturned, connected far and near. There was a chill in the wind blowing the painting, in my hand rustling. I imagined how she felt when she drew the last picture. Those who had hurt her ignored her, even herself, were all buried by her own hands. Alice called herself the Hunter. I liked this title. For some reason, after experiencing all this, I felt that something buried deep in my heart seemed to be breaking ground again. The shackles that had bound me for so long disappeared. I licked my slightly dry lips and smiled contentedly. It seems that you are ready to embrace the brave new world. Alice turned to look at me, a strange light flashing in her eyes. The car drove deep into the night, finally disappearing into the endless stream of traffic. No one knows what will happen next. Perhaps this is just the beginning.